I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me this evening. I know it is about midweek. We all have busy schedules. So thank you. And let's go ahead and get started. Before we dive into today's topic, I would just like to take some time to introduce myself. My name is Perry Newby Aguilar. I'm the Environmental Program Manager for the City of San Jose's municipal water system. I oversee the Cross Connection Control Program. I also serve as Muni Water's Compliance Manager. I coordinate and assist our Chief Water Operator with emergency response and disaster preparedness efforts for our water system. But today, I am excited to be here with you to discuss cross connections and backflow prevention and some simple ways that we can all help protect the safety and quality of our drinking water. There will be time at the end of today's presentation for any questions, so please feel free along the way to type your questions within the chat, and I will address as many as I can before the end of the presentation. And as I mentioned, or as I would like to mention, this is a recorded event, and it will be posted on our website later if you'd like to view it at your own leisure. And so let's jump in. Did you know that your drinking water may become contaminated if connections to your plumbing system are not properly protected? So that's the topic of today. The purpose of our local cross connection control program is to ensure that everyone has access to safe and clean drinking water that we provide as your water purveyor. What is backflow? Backflow is a general term used to describe the unintended reversal of water flow within our drinking water distribution system. There are two primary types of backflow. I'll try not to get into the nitty-gritty details of what those are, but they are back siphonage and back pressure. Both occur when there are changes in the system pressure, which cause the water to flow in the opposite direction of the norm. So, in the next few slides, we will review examples of what those conditions might be and events that can create pressure changes within the system that lead to a backflow situation. But let's talk about what is a cross connection. So keeping in mind what I defined as what a backflow is, a cross connection is the point where the backflow system is now impacting our drinking water system. Cross connections create a pathway for that contaminated water to now enter a drinking water system when a backflow incident occurs. Common examples of cross connections include what are depicted in the images on our screen. It's when a hose is submerged in a bucket or a pool, but it also can happen when an irrigation system is connected to a potable water or chemical containers, boiler systems, even fire sprinkler systems if there's added chemicals or stagnant water. These plumbing setups, such as auxiliary water sources like private wells and reclaimed water, these are conditions that are important because backflow events can occur at a cross connection, and contaminants resulting from those connections, such as fertilizers, pesticides, cleaning chemicals, bacteria, or the stagnant water from a sprinkler system, those can all be drawn and pushed through internal plumbing systems and brought back into drinking water main systems. So this can create a really serious public health risk in situations. In the next few slides, we will review examples of what those pressure changes might look like that can cause conditions where a backflow incident may occur. This illustration shows a cross connection combined with a water pressure change event. Um, you'll see the blue water represents potable, safe drinking water, while the orange water represents contaminated water. So in this particular example, the orange water is a pesticide solution. That is the contaminant. As you see on the right, the end user has a pesticide applicator that's connected through a hose, which is then connected overall through our main drinking water system. As shown towards the left side of the image, you can see that there is an emergency pipeline leak or there's a pressure change because of heavy use from a fire hydrant. These are all examples of a loss of water pressure that could have the ability to cause a backflow. And since it's connected to contaminated water, it could be drawn back into the public potable water drinking system. Um, If a backflow event occurs, it is our responsibility as the water purveyor to protect the public water system by removing that contaminated water from the distribution system. So this often requires extensive flushing of the system, which can result in a lot of loss, a large volume of water that may have otherwise been really safe to drink. The good news is that the backflow events are largely preventable. By implementing proper backflow prevention measures, we can protect our water quality and avoid the unnecessary water waste. So let's really quickly talk about why this is required. We do have cross-connection control programs to help prevent the main water supply and customers from potential backflow events. These programs reduce the risk of backflow events that could introduce non-potable water into our distribution system, and even small-scale contamination in a single property, such as irrigation runoff or industrial water processes, can potentially spread through a system if it's not properly controlled. So cross-connection control helps maintain stable hydraulic conditions and water quality throughout our distribution system by preventing the reversal flow and intrusion of the foreign substances and contamination. So not only is it first and foremost for the health and safety of every customer utilizing our water supply, but California cross-connection control requirements are in alignment with state regulations and federal Safe Drinking Water Act standards. Our water system, we as your water purveyor are legally obligated to implement and maintain a cross-connection control program that identifies and mitigates cross-connection hazards so that there is compliance during audits and inspections and annual reports, and also for instances like this where we provide education and resources to our end users. So let's talk about how we can prevent backflow. Customers play a very important role in protecting both your own plumbing, but also Muni Water's public water system. So this includes ensuring that your hoses are not left submerged in pools or buckets, installing and maintaining proper backflow prevention devices, which we'll talk about on the next slide, and avoiding direct connections with potable water and non-potable water sources. It's also recommended that customers have irrigation systems and other high-risk connections tested and serviced regularly by certified backflow professionals. So let's break this down a little bit. It's a pretty intense or heavy topic, but I tend to think that images help the most. This image shows a typical residential irrigation setup. It does include common what we call isolation backflow prevention devices. The isolation devices are installed on specific fixtures or water use features to prevent backflow at a specific point of use. So you'll see here in this image, there at the top on the most left, there is a image of a pressure vacuum breaker installed on an irrigation system. And then on the top right, there is a hose bib vacuum breaker that's installed at the end of a hose. These are isolation backflow prevention devices, preventing backflow from entering an internal plumbing system. If a backflow were to occur, no irrigation water or hose water is going to go back into the internal plumbing of this home. Muni Water, we don't operate on an isolation-based cross-connection control program. However, I do think this is really important material for a property owner to understand so that you can take a look at what your irrigation or your outdoor plumbing or even internal plumbing looks like to see what these backflow preventer devices, where they might come up within your home. For a water retailer, our cross-connection control program is primarily based on a containment approach. So whereas these resources are great for isolation, our program actually runs on containment, which means that from a regulatory standpoint, we only focus on what happens at the water meter. So where your water enters to your property, that's pretty much where we stop. So for example, under the current Muni Water program, we do not inspect or prescribe internal plumbing requirements. We won't dictate any isolation devices on a property. We don't go beyond the meter. In contrast, our containment operations, those you might see outside in the real world as you drive by, those are what we call really large backflow prevention assemblies. They're large devices typically installed right at the meter. They are often found along the sidewalk or the property line. They're commonly visible in systems that operate in containment-based cross-connection control programs. And they function as a way for us as a public water distribution system to prevent any potential backflow from that particular private property. For any additional guidance that you might have on an isolation backflow prevention device, so the devices you see on your screen here, um, I would suggest that your property owners consult with a licensed plumber or plumbing professional to really get familiar with what devices are available for your own water features. So, in summary, there are several simple steps that you can take to help prevent backflow and protect your household's drinking water. So, take some time to familiarize yourself with your plumbing and irrigation systems so that you can identify potential cross connections and understand how your water is protected. Never leave your hoses submerged in pools, buckets, ponds, or other containers where contaminants might be drawn into the water supply. So always detach your pesticide applicators, please. And if your property has a backflow prevention assembly, be sure to have those annually tested or checked out by a plumber. And if you would like to learn a little bit more about what could potentially cause a cross-connection hazard or identify any other high-risk plumbing features and water sources on your property, we are encouraging you to participate in our online cross-connection assessment survey. It is a simple way to better understand potential risks and help protect both your household plumbing and the overall public water system. So, if you're interested in learning more about the potential cross-connection hazards and identifying those plumbing features, we invite you to participate in our survey. It is completely voluntary, but it can help raise awareness of common contamination risks and provide useful information about areas where backflow protection might be needed. So, you can access the survey by scanning the QR code that's on your screen right here with your phone, or by visiting um, bit.ly/cross-connection. It is all lowercase. But if it's easier, I will go ahead and drop it in the chat for you to easily access the survey. And as promised, I was going to leave a lot of time for questions. So at this time, I'll be happy to answer any of your questions that you may have. Please feel free to submit them in the chat, and I'll try to address as many questions as possible. I know we covered a lot of material in a quick amount of time, but like I said, I wanted to be mindful of your time and address any questions that you have. If you need to leave before I address your question, please feel free to visit our city website. You can also contact our program directly at backflow@sanjoseca.gov. I will also drop that email in the chat. And you can also call our phone number, which is on the screen as well. Let's see. I have a few questions coming in. I'm going through pressure regulator. It looks like we have a question about a house that is connected to a water meter through a pressure regulator, which is considered as closed system. Will it still introduce backflow risk? I think there's always a risk for a backflow, so long as your backflow device uh, is tested annually and is at the meter. That's the only way that we can be really for sure from a containment program standpoint that your site is not introducing any backflow into our public main system. I hope that answers your question. If you want more details, please feel free to email the email address I dropped in the chat, backflow@sanjoseca.gov, and I can take a look at your site specifically and give a little bit more insight if you need more details. Um, Looks like there was comments on the letter for the survey. It is voluntary, the survey. I apologize if it came across as if it was mandatory. It is not a mandatory survey, but we do appreciate participation. And any follow-up questions or feedback that you have, you can also forward over to our Backflow email. Does every meter to the house have a backflow prevention device? If not, why not? For single-family residential homes, we do not require what we would call a containment backflow prevention assembly. Those are much larger devices. If not, why? Well, single-family residential homes have not historically created high hazards to the extent that we need to require a backflow prevention assembly. To require a backflow prevention assembly, there's a lot of maintenance and record keeping and testing that is required annually for that particular assembly. So, with that in mind, there are certain thresholds that a site would have to meet for a BPA to be required for that particular site. Um, About the survey being voluntary or mandatory. So this is a voluntary survey. I will make sure that if there is any future correspondence that we make sure that it is very clear whether something is required or voluntary. It is completely voluntary. You are more than welcome to fill out the survey and submit or open it up and take a look and not submit. It's entirely up to you. Has a cross-connection backflow issue been identified? Is this theoretical risk or a current problem with our water quality? I don't have a specific water quality event or backflow incident in mind to provide you, but there are incidences that have triggered the water quality or Water State Resources Control Board to create these regulations. And you can dive into Google and find some of those instances. They can be pretty gnarly, depending on the specific incident that you're looking into, but currently Muni Water does not have any to report. What are the most common situation where backflow occurs? I can't, and how many incidents? I can't give you a number off the top of my head in terms of how many incidents have occurred. But you're more than welcome to take a look through Google to dive into quite unique situations that have come up. They do prevent a lot of health risks. Common situation would be, like I said, that came up a lot in this presentation, is a submerged hose. It's probably the most innocent of acts and ends up being something that can be detrimental, right? So it's a really quick fix too. Just take your hose out of the bucket or create what we call an air gap where it's hanging over the bucket and it's not submerged. I've been in my current house since 99. This is the first time I'm hearing about this program. Any reason? That's a great question. Um, the State Water Resources Control Board, as one of their regulatory requirements for cross-connection control programs, they have enhanced the requirements on the municipal water system for us to provide education and outreach. So I am here to simply open the door and provide as much resources and information as possible. Historically, this cross-connection control program and the backflow prevention assembly requirement has really only impacted um, any customer aside from a residential dwelling unit. So commercial sites, industrial, institutional, government sites, those are the sites, customers that have had direct contact with us. But we, especially with the new regulations, are opening our doors to providing much more insight to our customers. I think it is great that I'm able to sit here and have a conversation with you about the isolation devices. So anything that I can do to enhance your knowledge on that to ensure that your own plumbing is as clean as possible. Let's see. What are the requirements for annual testing? I saw from your website that you put it on homeowners' responsibility. So annual testing is only for our backflow prevention assemblies that are operating on the containment program. So those backflow prevention assemblies are installed right at the meter. Like I said, those are typically our large high hazard sites like institutional or commercial industrial sites. They have high hazards on the area that could potentially be connected to the water supply where we want to have a backflow prevention assembly installed. Those backflow prevention assemblies can't just be installed and then let loose. We do require annual testing to ensure that the check valves are working, they're seated correctly, we're getting correct pressures throughout them. Um, so it is on the property owner. I know you had mentioned that it is put on the homeowner. It is on the property owner. It is their responsibility to submit their test records to us, and if they fail a test, to have it repaired. And we have a cross-connection specialist on our team that ensures that all of our BPAs within our service area are compliant and up to date with their tests. We have another question here. The landscape installer for my then new house didn't even mention backflow prevention device. He needs to be educated. Well, someone else also mentioned that this is the first time he or she has heard of this program. So it could be that a lot of this is already installed. It just goes unnoticed. There are requirements for hoses to be sold at hardware stores with a vacuum breaker already installed. So you would have to intentionally take that off your hose to not have it. So just go ahead and go outside, step outside and check to make sure your vacuum breaker is still there. You can always buy an individual vacuum breaker at a hardware store and attach it to your hose. There's a lot of water fixtures out there that have these devices in there. So, like I said, if you want to have a plumber or you have a handy friend that wants to check out your internal plumbing and make sure all of your water fixtures are protected and isolated, um, you're more than welcome to. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I think that is the last of questions. Please feel free to review this recording if you need a little bit of a reminder. And if you have any other questions that come to mind, please feel free to reach out to us at backflow at sanjoseca.gov. We're happy to help. Once again, my name is Perry Newby Aguilar, and thank you for joining me this evening. Have a great one.